Okay, so generative AI, um, it seems like it's absolutely everywhere you look these days. But is it really living up to all the hype?
Yeah, it's certainly a hot topic.
You've sent us a ton of material on this
Hmm.
reports, articles, even some of your own notes. It looks like you're really trying to figure out how businesses are actually using Gen AI.
I am.
So let's try to cut through the noise together.
Sounds good.
Are companies really seeing value in this? What are the real risks and rewards? And most importantly, what does this mean for you, the listener?
It's a really good question. And I think to get started, it's worth clarifying that we're not just talking about any AI here, right? We're talking about generative AI.
Right, exactly. So before we dive into all the data you sent, let's just make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure.
You know how analytical AI is like a superpowered detective?
Okay.
It looks for patterns and tries to make predictions.
Hmm.
Classic Sherlock Holmes stuff.
Right.
Well, generative AI is more like an artist creating something entirely new.
Interesting.
It can be text, pictures, even code. It's like the difference between analyzing a crime scene and then writing a whole new mystery novel based on what you learned.
That's a really good analogy.
Thanks.
And it really helps to illustrate why we've seen such a dramatic shift in AI adoption.
Yeah,
For years, it was kind of stuck around 50% of companies actually using it.
right.
But just this year, that number jumped to 72%,
That's massive.
according to the McKenzie Global Survey. Yeah.
Your sources show it really well too. Years of like slow growth and then boom, everybody's suddenly on board.
Yeah.
What do you think happened? Was it all generative AI or were there other factors at play?
I mean, the launch of ChatGPT in late 2022 probably played a huge role.
Yeah, for sure.
AI suddenly went from this like abstract concept
Right.
to something that anybody could try and use even if you weren't super tech savvy.
It really captured the public imagination.
It did.
But it's not just hype. It looks like companies are really using this technology in all sorts of interesting ways.
They are.
One of your exhibits here shows that marketing and sales teams are leading the way, followed by product development and IT.
That's right.
What do you think it is about these areas that makes them so well suited to generative AI?
Well, all those fields really depend on things like creativity and personalization.
Hmm.
And generative AI is really good at those things.
Yeah,
Imagine being able to generate personalized marketing copy for thousands of different customers, or even having an AI assistant helping you brainstorm new product ideas.
yeah,
The possibilities are kind of amazing.
it's true. Those are some really compelling use cases.
Yeah.
You even highlighted that the top two uses within marketing specifically are content support for marketing strategy and then also personalized marketing.
Right.
I'm curious, when you think about your own work, which of these applications feels most relevant?
Oh, that's a great question. And it brings up another interesting point.
Okay.
Even with all this buzz around generative AI, companies are still putting a lot of money into good old fashioned analytical AI.
Yeah.
Exhibit 5 shows that most industries are budgeting over 5% of their digital budgets to both. But spending on analytical AI actually tends to be higher.
That is surprising. Why do you think that is?
Well, analytical AI has been around a lot longer, so the technology is a lot more mature.
Right.
Companies probably feel more comfortable with it, and it's probably easier to integrate into their existing systems.
That makes a lot of sense. But, we can't just ignore the risks. One thing that really jumped out at me in your research exhibit 7 specifically is that inaccuracy is the number one risk that companies are worried about.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
There are some serious potential consequences.
Right.
Imagine an entire marketing campaign built around inaccurate data or a customer service chatbot giving out bad advice.
Yikes.
It could seriously damage a company's reputation.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting, though, that concerns about AI taking over jobs seem to have actually gone down compared to last year.
Yeah.
What do you think that means?
Well, maybe people are starting to realize that AI is just a tool. And like any tool, it can be used responsibly or irresponsibly.
Right.
It's not about AI replacing humans entirely. It's about how we can use it to enhance our own capabilities.
So it's more about working with AI rather than being replaced by it.
I think so.
Okay. And that brings us to the different ways that companies are actually putting generative AI into practice.
Okay.
You mentioned in your notes something about takers, shapers, and makers. Can you explain those?
Yeah, so you can think of takers as the early adopters, the ones just grabbing off the shelf solutions like ChatGPT and just putting them to work.
Right.
Shapers are a little more advanced. They're taking those tools and customizing them to their specific needs using their own data and systems.
Right.
And then there are the makers, the ones who are building their own custom AI models from scratch.
Wow. So it's kind of like choosing between buying a pre-built house, renovating an existing house, or designing and building your dream home from the ground up.
Yeah.
It's a perfect analogy.
Mm.
And it looks like from Exhibit 9, a lot of companies are taking that hybrid approach,
They are.
trying out the pre-built stuff, but then also exploring custom solutions or even building their own things.
Right. Like dipping their toes in the water before jumping in the deep end.
But speaking of diving deep,
Yeah.
it looks like the companies seeing the biggest returns from generative AI are the ones going all in.
Absolutely. Exhibit 11 calls these the high performers.
Run.
And they're not just messing around, they're using generative AI in a lot of different parts of their businesses,
Interesting.
focusing on customizing it and even building their own AI models from scratch.
Wow.
And they're also much more proactive about managing the risks.
They're not just throwing technology at a problem and hoping it works.
Exactly. They're really thinking about how AI fits into their overall strategy.
Right.
Maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. It's not just about the tech itself,
Okay.
it's about how you actually use it.
I like that. But even these high performers are facing challenges.
Mm.
It looks like data related issues are pretty common even for those doing it the best.
That's true. And I think everybody can relate to that even in our personal lives.
Mhm.
We all struggle with managing our data, keeping our information safe, and making sense of all that digital clutter.
Yeah.
Now imagine trying to do that, but at a company level with huge amounts of data coming in from every direction.
That's mind boggling.
Yeah.
So if even the top companies are struggling with data, what can businesses do to try to get a handle on this?
That's the $1,000,000 question.
And that's exactly what we'll be diving into in our next segment. So much data everywhere, right? I mean, if even these top performing companies are struggling with data management, what can businesses do to get a handle on it, especially when it comes to generative AI?
Well, it really comes down to this data is the fuel that powers the generative AI engine. But just like a car can't run on dirty fuel, you need high quality data to get good results from your AI.
Right. So it's not just about having more data, it's about having the right data.
Exactly. And managing that data properly is so important. Think about how much time we spend just trying to organize our own digital lives, photos, emails, all those files,
It can be a lot.
right? Now imagine trying to do that for an entire company with tons of data coming in from everywhere. You need a solid plan to make sure all that data is accurate, secure, and organized so your AI can actually use it.
It's like if you were writing that mystery novel we talked about earlier. You wouldn't just throw any random words on the page.
No way.
You'd carefully choose words that fit the story, create the right tone, and make sense together.
That's right.
It sounds like the same principle applies to data and AI.
Absolutely. And with generative AI, there's an added layer of complexity.
How so?
Well, because these systems learn from the data we feed them.
Right.
If that data is biased or reflects existing societal inequalities, then the AI can actually end up amplifying those biases.
Oh, wow. So it's like teaching a child using outdated textbooks.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
might learn things that aren't true anymore or even things that are harmful.
Right. So, responsible AI development isn't just about making sure the technology works, it's also about making sure that it's being used ethically.
Which means being really careful about the data it learns from.
Exactly. Responsible AI development has to be multifaceted, you know?
Okay.
It's about making sure that these AI systems are not just effective, but also fairly, transparent, and accountable.
Like having checks and balances to make sure the AI is doing what it's supposed to.
Exactly. And that means having the right people involved data scientists, legal experts,
Yeah.
business leaders, all working together to create those safeguards.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that companies are kind of shifting away from just building AI solutions themselves
Yeah,
and moving more towards a buy, build, and partner model.
that's right.
What kind of partnerships are we talking about here?
Well, we're seeing some really interesting collaborations popping up.
Like what?
You've got tech giants partnering with startups,
Okay.
traditional businesses teaming up with AI specialists. Everyone's kind of realizing that it's not just about going it alone anymore.
It's about finding the right partners to help you reach your goals.
Exactly. It's like a whole ecosystem is developing around generative AI.
Yeah, it's like the early days of the internet.
Totally.
Everybody's rushing in to figure out what's possible.
And just like with the internet, there are definitely still challenges to overcome.
Like what?
One of the biggest ones is figuring out how to integrate AI into existing workflows and systems.
Right. You can't just plug it in and expect it to work perfectly.
Nope. It takes a lot of work and a deep understanding of how your business operates, what data you have, and how to connect everything together.
It's like trying to add a new room onto your house.
Yeah.
You can't just slap it on any old way.
Mhm.
You have to make sure it's structurally sound and then it fits with the rest of the house.
I like that analogy. And sometimes, just like with home renovations,
Yeah,
you need an expert to help you get it done right.
right.
True. And that actually leads us to another big challenge: finding people with the right skills and expertise to navigate this whole AI world.
Yeah, we definitely need those skilled data scientists and AI engineers.
Of course.
But it's not just about technical skills.
No.
We also need people who can bridge the gap between technology and business.
Yeah.
You know, people who can explain complex technical stuff in a way that everyone understands and translate those concepts into real world strategies.
So we need people who can see the big picture.
Yeah, they're like the architects of this whole AI revolution, designing the blueprint for how it's all going to work.
So it's almost like a new kind of leader is emerging, the AI savvy business leader.
Exactly. Someone who understands both the amazing potential of AI, but also the potential downsides.
Right.
They see opportunities for innovation, but they're also mindful of the ethical considerations and the impact on people.
So they're guiding their companies through this new uncharted territory.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's incredibly exciting to think about all the possibilities.
Yeah, but it's also a little bit daunting, right? I mean, we're talking about potentially changing entire industries and the way we work.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but that's why it's so important to have these kinds of conversations,
Yeah.
to really explore all the different sides of generative AI and start thinking about how we can all prepare for this AI powered future.
And that brings us back to you, the listener.
Yeah.
How do you see these changes affecting your own career? What can you start doing today to prepare? Maybe it's taking online courses in data science or AI ethics,
Yeah.
or maybe it's focusing on those uniquely human skills like critical thinking, adaptability,
Mm,
emotional intelligence.
those are all going to be crucial.
It's been an incredible journey exploring this topic with you.
It has.
We've seen how generative AI can totally revolutionize the way we work, learn, and even create.
It really can.
But it's up to us to make sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
I agree.
So keep learning, keep asking those questions, and stay curious about this ever changing world of AI.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So we've talked a lot about the potential of generative AI and all the cool things it can do.
I have.
But with any new powerful technology, there are responsibilities that come with it.
Right.
So let's talk about some of those bigger societal impacts.
Okay.
It's not just about how it works, but also about how it should work, right?
Absolutely. As we start integrating AI more and more into our lives,
Mhm.
we have to be very careful and think about fairness, transparency, accountability, all that.
That's true.
Yeah.
We need to make sure these systems aren't just reflecting the biases that already exist in the world, or even worse, creating new ones.
Exactly.
It's almost like if you think about training a dog,
Okay.
if you're always giving negative feedback, it's going to grow up fearful and anxious, right?
Right.
But if you use positive reinforcement, consistent training, it's probably going to be much more well behaved.
Yeah.
So it seems like the same thing applies to these AI systems.
I think so.
We have to train them with the right values and principles to make sure they have a positive impact on society.
That's a great analogy. The data that we use to train these AI models is like their upbringing.
I like that.
If we feed them biased data, they're going to learn biased behaviors.
So, for example, let's say a company is using AI to help them with hiring decisions, but the data that it's been trained on is full of historical prejudices.
Right.
The AI might unintentionally screen out really qualified candidates simply because it's learned to associate certain characteristics with success based on that flawed data.
Yeah, that's a real concern. So, responsible AI development is about more than just avoiding legal trouble or bad PR.
Uh,
It's about building trust with the public and making sure that AI benefits everyone, not just a select few.
it's a big responsibility, but it's one we can't afford to ignore.
I agree. And another huge part of that is protecting people's privacy.
Right.
Think about how much personal data is needed to train these really powerful Gen AI models.
That's a lot.
We need some really clear guidelines and strong safeguards to make sure all that information is being handled responsibly.
Okay, so we've got to make sure we're protecting people's privacy and making sure the AI is being used ethically.
Right.
But we also can't avoid the big question of AI's impact on jobs. A lot of people are really worried that these advancements, especially in generative AI, are going to lead to mass unemployment.
Yeah, it's understandable that people have those fears. New technologies have always disrupted the job market to some extent.
Yeah, throughout history, we've seen this happen over and over again.
Right. But I think it's more helpful to view this as an opportunity to adapt and evolve rather than just being afraid.
Okay, so how can we do that?
Well, we've seen it time and time again, right? These big technological advancements end up creating new jobs, new industries,
That's true.
things we couldn't have even imagined before.
So what's the key?
I think the key is to be proactive. You've got to focus on developing those skills that are going to be in demand in this new landscape.
So instead of thinking of AI as competition, we should be thinking of it as a collaborator.
Exactly. Think about it this way. What if instead of spending hours on those really tedious tasks that AI can easily automate,
Right.
you could use the AI to take care of all that for you?
Okay.
And then you're freed up to focus on the things that humans are really good at: creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, building relationships.
Yeah.
AI can be this amazing tool for enhancing our own abilities.
Right. So it's not about humans versus machines.
Mhm.
It's about humans and machines working together.
I think that's a much more optimistic and realistic way to look at it.
And that brings us back to you, the listener.
As we wrap up this deep dive into generative I want you to think about a few things.
Okay.
How do you see all these changes affecting your own career path? What can you start doing today to prepare for this AI powered future?
Maybe it's learning new skills.
Yeah, there are tons of online courses out there on data science, AI ethics, all sorts of things.
Could be going back to school.
Or maybe it's just focusing on developing those uniquely human skills we talked about: critical thinking, adaptability, emotional intelligence.
All those things that are going to be so valuable in a world where AI is becoming more and more common.
It's been amazing exploring this topic with you.
It really has. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We've seen how generative AI has the potential to totally transform the way we work, learn, create.
It's really mind blowing.
But it's up to all of us to make sure that it's being used for good, ethically and responsibly.
I completely agree.
So keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and stay curious about this incredible world of AI.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.